Hey everybody, welcome back to PTSD Studios. I'm Ken from Heroes Diving for the Sea, and today I have Julianne Young. She is you were a representative for Idaho, and you're running for office again now.
I am.
So Julianne, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ken. Excited to be here with you today. I am Julianne Young. I served in the House of Representatives for 6 years and have had a little bit of a break, and we're headed back again. I'm grateful for the chance to visit with you today.
Fantastic. So the purpose of these interviews is, these aren't campaigning events that we want to talk about veterans and first responder issues. So definitions first. Veterans, for our purposes, are anybody who's been in the military and served at least 180 days, and that can be active duty or reserve time, doesn't matter. First responders are peace officers, so anybody who enforces the law on the road, detention deputies and officers, parole probation, firefighters, EMTs. We've also extended to emergency room staff and people who work in high stress medical fields, like people who work at the State Hospital South in some of those wards. So we want to take care of people who have mental health issues and physical issues for things that happen to them while they're serving the public.
Okay.
So let's start off with the bill that just passed, the governor signed. So that's House Bill
642.
642.
Yes.
So do you want to tell us what your thoughts were on that bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was excited when you raised this issue of what happens when somebody has a disability or a death in the line of duty and how we take care of those people, because I happened to be speaking with an officer just last night, and he was so excited that Idaho just passed and the governor signed House Bill 642, which you would know better than I how this lines up with what happens in other states, but I think it's incredible. It's the result of a tragic situation, actually, where we had couple of deaths, some injuries, and we discovered that the benefit that the families of those who did not make it was not as good as the benefit that people received when they did survive. And that just seemed wrong. And so the state has gone back. They've made sure that those benefits are just as good in a situation where somebody actually passes away, that those benefits go to the surviving spouse and to their children. And then they've also ensured that we have a pension in place that is just as good in both circumstances. And it's just a really fantastic step in the right direction. As I looked at the bill, it looks like it was unanimous, bipartisan support on the part of the legislature, and the governor did a big signing ceremony.
Yeah.
So fantastic support.
Yeah, and to get anything where both sides of the political spectrum will agree unanimously, that's crazy these days.
Right.
So Idaho is definitely one of the states that's leading the way on this. Most of our states, if somebody is injured on the job as a firefighter or law enforcement, the benefits are almost non-existent.
Really?
So Idaho has really stepped up on this bill. So HB 642, everybody read up on that. And if you're from another state and you want something to copy to help out your first responders, this is a great way to go.
Yeah. Fantastic. You know, one other thing that I loved about it, and it of course would change maybe with the dynamics in your state, but $110 a month, or $110 per 100,000 of a person's income is what it takes to provide this fantastic benefit. That just feels like so little to give so much for people who have already given so much, right?
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, these are hard jobs. Not something that a lot of people can do or are willing to do. So being able to support them when they get injured or die, and to support their families if they die, is an incredibly important thing to do. So I'm very proud of the state of Idaho, our legislature, our governor.
Good job.
Yeah, leading the way on that particular fight. So when it comes to death benefits and disability benefits, one of the things that we don't talk about much, and as a society we have a real problem discussing suicide openly. Even saying the word. So like this video going up on social media and things like that, the more times we say suicide, the more it's going to get metered back. Because there's this misconception that talking about suicide, you might give somebody the idea to do it.
Create suicide.
And your husband works in mental health. I started off my bachelor's degree is in psychology. One of the things I think everybody in mental health knows and understands is if you ask somebody, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about suicide? They're not going to go out and do it because you gave them the idea. And that seems to be the conception that we're running with, and it's nuts. And most of the time, in fact, people who may be thinking or be on the verge of committing suicide will come back and step away because they see that someone cares. So the mental health aspect of this is so many of the physical disabilities people have, the self-harm issues people have, is because they're not getting the mental health care that they need. So PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is one of the most insidious mental health issues our veterans and first responders face. Because you never know what's going to happen. You never know when you're going to have a problem or what's going to trigger those sorts of things. So what are your thoughts on mental health when it comes to our first responders and veterans?
Yeah, this is such a sensitive, hard issue, but I appreciate what you're saying. My husband actually has been the one on the other end of the phone when people call the suicide hotline, and I appreciate the efforts that are made to save lives, and even in situations where people are struggling, we see the value of life, and we want people to choose life, and we see the value in that. But sometimes when you're the person struggling, you lose track of that because everything just feels so incredibly overwhelming. And having the opportunity to access help and resources can make all the difference. One of the other experiences that I've had in my life is actually a son who really struggles with OCD.
Oh.
And that's another mental health issue that is not very well understood. But one of the things that we learned as we tried to get help for him is how limited those resources are, and how so many times these well-meaning government policies that are out there to protect us actually get in the way of accessing the help that we need. And so you're more of an expert on PTSD than I am. I don't know if it's the same, but I'm going to assume that it is. In the case of our son, there are some fantastic experts who know how to work with his specific mental health needs, but they're in Virginia, or they're in California, or they're in Washington, but they're not usually in Idaho. When you have these very specific needs, it's tough to find care. And so one of the things that I really fought for while I was in the legislature is getting government out of the way and providing opportunity for people to access help across state lines. And we actually passed some legislation that I think set a new bar nationwide. I hope that it will continue to be expanded on and adopted in other places, but all it did is it said if you are a provider with a license in good standing in your state, the state of Idaho will give you an expedited credential. Not a license. You don't have to pay the big bucks and take all the tests and jump through the hoops just so you can take care of one person here in our little tiny state. You have a license in good standing in your state, and we want you to help care for the people in Idaho that also need your expertise. So that was a huge win for us here in Idaho. I hope that will continue. And there are some other things that I've been involved in most recently to help increase access to that care. I've actually helped run legislation while I've been home, while I'm not formally in office, and one of those pieces of legislation unfortunately made it through the House but died in the Senate. We were short one vote in a committee, But that legislation would have provided increased support for our veterans by allowing a retired chaplain to be able to get licensed. Again, this licensure is getting in the way in these situations, so that they could provide care to this population that they're so familiar with and so good at serving. People don't realize that chaplains spend actually the majority of their time not preaching, but providing counseling and direct care. This is what they do in the trenches, and I believed that they should be able to provide that same care as they come home. One of the things that we've seen is that we're just struggling, even within the National Guard, to have enough folks to provide that mental health care. And this was one possibility that would have increased that pool of qualified providers. So some of those people still provide care without pay. Under the circumstances, but I really think that we ought to give them the opportunity to provide that care and be compensated for their services. And so that's definitely on my bucket list. If I am able to get back there, we're going to make sure that a chaplain who is a counselor and has the training to be a counselor and provides, spends most of his time counseling, can counsel when he comes home. So.
And on that front, I can speak a little bit about that, because originally, so I enlisted in the Army when I was 18, and then when I was going to get my commission to become an officer, my plan was to be a chaplain. So I went from my bachelor's in psychology to a master's in divinity. So for those of you who don't know, it's a master's in the study of God, or the divine. And I gotta say, when it came to that, so we had a lot of, this was at a Quaker school, so we spent a lot of time on the Bible, Scripture, especially the New Testament. But I would guess that 60 to 70% of the coursework we did was on counseling. So family counseling, marital counseling, premarital counseling was a big one. We spent 2 semesters on that.
Wow.
And so our chaplains are very well qualified to do this kind of work. And for them to be unable to charge insurance for that is amazing, because the on-the-job training as a chaplain when it comes to counseling far outpaces everybody else.
Right. And why would we trust these individuals to provide care for men in the trenches, and then you can't provide care after they get home? It just doesn't make sense. So.
Well, and it's, I think as a society we have a big problem with, people think what they see on TV is real. Or the news is real. War movies and things like that, you know, you always see people panicking. It's part of, stuff goes on. That's actually not what this group of people does. We don't panic, we don't freak out. And when it comes to our chaplains, they spend so much time doing this counseling. It's what they do all day, every day. They're not doing all the stuff that our chaplains or our doctors do at the healthcare facilities. It's really, I mean, most of them, 20 years as a chaplain is, they get more experience than probably 30 years in a hospital.
Right.
So, yeah, really supporting them, I'm all for that, and I love that idea, because mental health is a big struggle and a big focus that we have to deal with. So, when it comes to veterans and first responders, if you spent much time with us, we seem to speak a foreign language, right? As we're talking to each other, it starts to become shorthand. We use words that people don't recognize and don't understand. So we have a difficult time adjusting, coming back and getting into society and working together and reintegrating with our families and other people. I have heard people talk about different laws or funding sources we can pass to help provide integration counseling for when you retire as a law enforcement officer or get out of the military, some ways to integrate back with the community. If somebody were to come up with a program or a bill to help provide integration services, deprogramming services for us, because we're all brainwashed and programmed when we go into these jobs. Is that something you've ever thought about, ways to reintegrate people back once they've done these jobs?
Yeah. You know, the idea of the reintegration deprogramming is not something that I'm familiar with, but I will say that there is a component of the chaplain bill that I think is applicable here, and that is that when somebody retires from the military, returns home, and they bring this set of skills, the legislature has tried to provide opportunities for them to serve, but sometimes our bureaucracies are slow to pick up on that. So I think one of the healthiest things a person can do to reintegrate is to use their skills and to feel valued. And when we close the door on that, that's an unfortunate thing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and there's a lot of alternatives we need to think about too as we're going through this. So the VA's primary methodology for helping this is you see a doctor for about 10 minutes at a time, and then you might go to a specialist for joint pain or pain management, stuff like that, and then they throw meds at you. They're starting now to go into some holistic alternative healthcare options and opportunities. What are your thoughts on the less traditional healthcare options?
Yeah. So my dad was a family practice doc, but he was a country doc.
Right.
He grew up in the hills of Cove, Oregon. He knew every bug and plant and everything out there. And he was a real believer in this idea that our human body is built to heal and to thrive. And so any chance you get, rather than just throwing medication at things, you really need to look for how you can support overall health. And he was really great at that. I now have a son that actually went into functional medicine, which has a really strong focus. It kind of marries naturopathic with traditional medicine in the sense that they use a lot of evaluative tests and labs and things to direct what they do. But they also go to more holistic options before they just turn to medication. And what he sees in his practice all the time is that there are ways to actually help people become well instead of just treating or tamping down symptoms. And certainly we do need medication in some circumstances, so I'm not discounting that. It's more a question of priorities, and one of the things that I think is unfortunate is when you have someone and you could do something to improve their overall wellness, and instead of doing that, you leave them in this sick situation, ill situation, and you band-aid it. And so I'm all for looking at alternative methods, nutritional methods, lifestyle changes, and some of the other kinds of things like what your organization is doing are really interesting to me, really important, and I think fascinating. Folks need to be aware.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many options that are out there and available, but I want to go to, you brought up diet. So when you're in the military, they spend a lot of time actually thinking about what they feed us. You have to maintain muscle mass. Well, like my last deployment, I was burning through 10,000 calories a day. Summer was 120 plus degrees, so you're going to burn it off fast that way. But so we get used to that. The high nutritional content, the well put together meals, and then we come back, and a lot of guys will gain 20, 30, 40 pounds. I did. I was almost 270 pounds 2 years after I came back, because I was still in the habit of eating lots of food and like hydration drinks, Powerade, things like that. Just hammering that stuff, and there's some calories there. So this has been brought up to me quite a few times. If we spent a little less money on some of the drugs that we're giving these guys and found a way to provide reasonable nutrition for them, they would probably be better off. Because most of the food we eat is so processed. And in the military, the food is actually quite healthy and quite well done. Is there anything you can think of when it comes to, are there any realistic methods you could think of?
Oh,
That's a tough one, right?
boy, that is a little bit of a tough one. It definitely comes back to the holistic approach, though, to health. And you would know better than I what the VA is doing to provide some of this kind of information and support to veterans. Is that happening at the VA?
Not really.
Okay.
And so when I look at this stuff, I mean, I can speak intelligently on the military side. From public safety, I've got one son's a deputy sheriff, one's a firefighter. Both are Army veterans. And as I'm looking at this stuff and seeing kind of how this all breaks down, and, you know, even, like you said, it's a tough one, not something we have to answer right now, but figuring out a way to kind of change those dietary habits and be able to provide a healthy food source might make a lot of sense, which is why I brought that up, because it's tough. And when you, I've thought about this too. So we pay, what would it cost to provide a food service, because there's so many of them out there these days, with healthy food options that are going to help people as they go through their healing journey, is probably going to cost less than what they're doing in drugs.
Right, right. Well, and it's been one of my long frustrations that, and I don't know how much crossover there is here, but for example, with food stamps, we provide people with lots of candy and pop, right? And then we turn around and we pay for diabetes, and it just makes no sense.
Yeah.
So there certainly are situations where we're already providing some dietary support, and that certainly ought to be healthy.
Well, and this is a little off the veteran and first responder stuff. So what on things like SNAP? I was raised on food stamps. I know the system very, very well, and tons of junk food, tons of soda. I have heard ideas brought up about changing that system so that you can't buy junk food, and that there, even one where it was actually providing the food. You have 5 people in your family, so you get enough of these meals or enough contents to make meals for your family in a healthy way. Is that something that, while you were in the Idaho legislature, that was even brought up as some modification to something like that?
Not while I was there. I do understand that there was legislation brought to remove candy and pop from SNAP in Idaho, and that's definitely an idea that I would be supportive of. It's not something that was acted on while I was there, and I actually am not sure of the reasons that this bill was able to come up because I heard conversations while I was there from people, why don't we change this? And the response I always got was, well, we can't, it's a federal program.
Right.
But obviously that's not entirely true, because Idaho did act on it now, and certainly anything that we can do to improve overall health fundamentally, even if that's just providing good education about the impact that diet has on health, so that people can make a good choice themselves when they go to the grocery store, that's a step in the right direction. And even if you don't set up a whole food distribution system, that's huge.
WIC, Women, Infants, and Children. I don't remember seeing it anytime recently, but a few years back, I was going through the grocery store and I saw there's little tags next to things on the shelf, and said that they qualified for the WIC coupons. What do you think of doing something like that for food assistance?
And encouraging healthy choices, identifying them, is that what you're suggesting?
Identifying them, and then also, I think that maybe, and the reason I brought this up too is a lot of the veterans are talking about this.
Okay.
If we do something where there's a nutritional assistance program, if we just set it up like SNAP, people are going to wind up doing the junk food thing. So if we had nutritional assistance and help, and had it set up like WIC does, so it shows you what is eligible and what is not, that might help people have better dietary habits and get healthier. Instead of having obese people on public assistance, Because it's really weird. You know, you need help with your food, but you get overweight because the food that you're eating is terrible for you. It's highly processed, high in calories, high in fat. I was just thinking out loud that may be something along those lines, maybe a program where the legislature looks at on how to develop ways to change any assistance we're doing with food to provide healthier options and direct them or maybe reduce some of those things. Soda's a big one I'd love to see go away when it comes to food assistance.
Right, right. Well, if the point of food is to nourish,
Right.
then it doesn't make sense to nourish with things that are just loaded with sugar and things that we know are going to exacerbate cancer and all these other health issues that we're already fighting, and now we're going to make it worse.
Yeah, absolutely. So, medication's a big one. We've been seeing that pop up quite a bit in the news all over the place. I mean, from the opioid crisis is big in the news. When it comes to medications, pharmaceuticals, and drugs, is there anything that Idaho's been working on or that you've been working on when it comes to our medication system and how to provide better health options? And that can go back to holistic medicine. It can go to regulating and deregulating the drug companies. Do you have thoughts on the medication system, how it's working?
You know, the bottom line with so much of that assistance is just what insurance covers, right? And so it's not, in my mind, as much about building the system as it is taking a look at what we see as valid medical care. Because if what we're providing covers these types of care, and those types of care, I believe, would be more cost effective, then it would be a win-win all the way around in terms of what we're already doing. But you have to be willing to take a broader look at things and not just resort immediately to the medication.
I agree, and that's, we need to be in a position where we're thinking, okay, so the VA, when I first got back from Iraq, this last deployment, the monthly medications the VA sent me would fill this chair.
Wow.
Just bags and bags and bags, 4 or 5 bottles of 500 milligram tablets, and it was insane. And so now I'm down to a handful. But I think as a group, we need to focus on alternatives. We need to, medication definitely, like you said, has a place, but we need to think about pushing into some of those less traditional methods. What are your thoughts on, from our healthcare system, and especially when it comes to public assistance, whether or not it's Medicaid, Medicare, state-funded medical health programs, what are your thoughts on exploring more holistic medical options?
Yeah, I think it definitely needs to be part of the picture. It's the direction the conversation's going culturally. Anyway, I just see this shift culturally where people really are tired of the Band-Aid and they really want more of a holistic answer. I believe that's the case. So I think we ought to adapt. And the problem with bureaucracy is it's huge. It's like steering this great big huge ocean liner, right? But at some point there's got to be enough counter pressure from the public that it starts to move. and we need to push bureaucracy in that direction, absolutely.
I wholeheartedly agree. One of the programs that's being pushed right now heavily for people in chronic pain, which I definitely fall in that, is cognitive behavioral therapy. You familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on CBT and maybe what we could do as Idahoans to steer toward CBT as a way to help treat some of these healthcare issues?
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the application of CBT to treating pain specifically. I've seen it used in other counseling settings, and I certainly believe that so much of how our body responds, we do have some level of control over. And so it makes sense that it could be helpful in addressing pain. So I'm a mom. I have 10 kids, and I didn't do painkillers. And I really learned, that's my experience with pain, sorry. But the thing that I learned is that it does have so much to do with your mental state and whether you see that pain as a threat. Right. Or whether you're able to accept the pain and relax and move forward without tensing up and fighting it. And so I don't know if that's how CBT applies to
pain management. It is.
To pain management? Okay, we didn't do too bad then.
Oddly enough, until you brought that up, I'd never thought of CBT as anything other than a therapy for pain management.
Okay.
That's all. Nobody's ever discussed it with me for any other thing aside from pain management.
Okay.
So that is interesting.
Is ACT also used for pain management?
ACT.
Acceptance and commitment therapy? That's kind of like, I wonder about the use of that, or is that, I don't know.
No, I think that's part of, it's integrated into the CBT model that the ACT with what the VA is doing.
Okay.
Because I do a monthly video call, and it's actually getting pretty cool. The VA system really was smart on this. My psychiatrist, I don't even know where he lives, and my CBT therapist is out of Utah, and so I can actually do a live video call through the VA system on my phone, my computer, so we can talk through all of the processes and all of the things that are going on there. And I think, quite frankly, when it comes to veterans and first responders, we need to change our system a bit so we are not going into clinics more than we have to. That it's VA Health Connect is what it's called.
Telehealth is huge. So huge. And when you're struggling with physical pain, with mental health issues, just having to get up and go somewhere is a barrier to care, and we don't need more barriers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that we face because we're a dangerous group of people. I mean, you think about it, physically active, from a military standpoint, we're not taught to de-escalate certain situations. We're taught to make things not alive or blown up, whatever it may be. And then with what cops and firefighters have to deal with, your aggressive tendencies rise to the surface. They're not suppressed; they come up as you go through this stuff. And when you have to go in for counseling, whether or not it's for CBT or just your general mental health, think about going into a clinic with 100 other people in the waiting room, or like a hospital, something like that. Being put into those environments when you are already suffering from PTSD symptoms, you're already agitated, it can be really difficult. So here's what I want to get your thoughts on. So, chronic pain medication. I'm on a drug called Belbuca. It's an opioid. It costs, the dose I'm on is about $1,500 a month.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a film you put in your mouth. Little patches dissolve in your mouth. It's a newer drug. You don't get high off of it. But as a society, we're fighting opioids right now, and some of that we've gone way too far. So I understand that we need to protect our citizens, we need to protect our patients, but we've overcorrected. So I want your thoughts on how we might correct this part of the system. So for me to get that medication, I'm in the Salt Lake VA system, so Cedar City, Utah, Idaho Falls, maybe even Twin Falls covers under that footprint. Out of tens of thousands of veterans, last I was told, there is one pharmacist who can fill the prescription for that drug, and there's 3 pain management medicine doctors who can prescribe it.
Are they in Salt Lake?
Yes, they're all in Salt Lake. Oh, I'm not sure about the pharmacist, but the doctors are. So I have to do monthly visits with pain management because I'm on an opioid. And I can do 2 of those remotely. Then I have to drive to Salt Lake. So you got somebody in chronic pain with PTSD in traffic in Salt Lake. Right? Okay. And then all that driving. It's crazy. And then the expense, because they have to reimburse me for my travel at the federal per diem rates. So,
Do they ever provide a satellite clinic where you can visit?
They had one in Ogden.
Okay. Nothing in Idaho, though.
Nothing. The whole time I've been in the VA healthcare system, since 2009, it's been that way.
Okay.
So, one of the things I brought up was, hey, instead of me driving to you, since we can do video conferencing, why don't I just do, because part of it is you have to do blood work, urinalysis, make sure you're not drinking heavily or smoking weed while you're on opioids. There's a clinic in Idaho Falls, there's a clinic in Pocatello that belong to the VA. I can do my drug tests there. Mm-hmm. But what we're facing is, from a legislative standpoint, I actually have to do that physically face-to-face every 90 days. So, yeah, we're doing a good job of trying to take care of patients.
And is that a federal requirement or a state requirement?
That is a federal requirement.
It's a federal
right
requirement.
Now. And I'm hearing from other veterans that states like Colorado are trying to make that more restrictive. So you have to physically see that person once a month as opposed to every 90 days. Government rarely makes things better. So what are your thoughts on some of those hurdles that we're putting in place? What can we do on a state level? I mean, we can't override federal regulation, but when it comes to healthcare and treatment and helping people, what are your thoughts? How can we reduce the government interference in healthcare? Some of these things that just become ridiculous and overly burdened.
Yeah. You know, as you were talking, the place my mind went automatically was the ability to either provide a satellite clinic. I appreciate the face-to-face. I appreciate the need to do labs. I think one of the great things that came out of COVID, if there was something good that came out of COVID, was that we learned that we could do a lot of things in ways that we hadn't tried before. And that maybe they were a little easier and a little better. I know even at the state hospital, for a period of time, we had a telehealth psychologist from Europe that was calling in to help provide care to patients. So I think there's certainly places to look at that. If it's a federal regulation to go down physically, I would wonder if there was room to work with our federal delegation and get a satellite clinic here. You know, it's once every 3 months. Could they not come to Idaho once every 3 months and at least save you from the hassle of having to deal with Salt Lake traffic? You know, can they, once every 3 months, can they show up in East Idaho and in Boise? I'm assuming North Idaho might go to Washington or something, I don't know, but.
Yeah, so Boise is its own system separated from Salt Lake.
Okay.
So, and that's crazy too with the VA. The difference between the VA hospital in Salt Lake and Boise is striking. Boise is so much nicer.
Wow.
Everything about it, including the treatment you get when you go in, is better in Boise than in Salt Lake. It's really a straight contrast. Through the VA system, you basically, you're supposed to go to the clinics that are in your region.
Okay.
Or you can do what I did, and you register as what's called a traveling veteran. And doing this program with Heroes Diving for the Sea, I'm constantly traveling.
Okay.
And so if I go to any clinic, they're able to pull up my information, or any hospital. But from a healthcare standpoint, I think we probably need to look a little deeper at the care and how things are working, and maybe people from Salt Lake going to Boise looking at it, And the CBOC, Community-Based Outpatient Clinic for the VA. Go to Pocatello and then go to Idaho Falls. All you got to do is walk in the clinic, and the difference, you wouldn't think it's the same organization.
Wow.
It's that stark.
What do you attribute that to?
I don't know. And it's lack of oversight, too much oversight. I've thought about this so much. I really don't know what the answer is. I don't know why Salt Lake, the facilities are dilapidated. Like for blood work, I'll do the urinalysis for my drug test in Salt Lake. I won't draw blood at that hospital. It does not seem clean and safe to me. And it's also, most of our VA hospitals are named after Medal of Honor recipients. I think that if we're going to name something after those guys, we probably ought to have the best facilities
How to keep
possible.
it up.
Yeah, it's a weird one, but I'm glad to hear you say that you like the idea of the telehealth stuff. I think that really, it helps a lot of us.
How many veterans are there in Idaho that are traveling down to Salt Lake? You probably know that. Do you have a number-ish?
I don't know what that number is. I know that the bulk of us that go to Salt Lake are from Pocatello, Idaho Falls, and this area right here. So Legislative District 30, there's a lot of us, and then whatever district Idaho Falls is. But I'll get that information. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, and maybe there's a state facility that we could offer to the VA. Come use our facility, help our veterans.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And there's so much that goes on. It's hard to, everybody to stay on the pulse of things. And the more we try and provide good oversight and good care, it tends to blow up bureaucracies as we're doing that. And shrinking stuff down. So, your time in the legislature, did you get any veterans groups coming to you lobbying or asking for help, or?
I was aware of veterans groups, but I don't know that there were any specific issues that they brought saying, please help with this or that. But I will say that one of my strengths has been the ability to take complex issues where you have disagreeing sides and to be able to really understand both sides of the issue and then find a principled solution that's going to move us forward. And there isn't a problem around that there isn't a good solution to. And sometimes in politics, we like to paint these pictures that, oh, this group or that group is compassionate or not compassionate. And the reality is that I think we all see the problems, but sometimes we approach them differently based on whatever our fundamental principles are. And so you've got to understand both the problem, but you also have to understand the way people think about solutions and find a solution that's going to get broad support.
Yeah, and from our veteran and first responder standpoint, we talk about this a lot as a group. We some people's solutions are blow up the bureaucracy, make government bigger. Others are take the government out of it as much as possible. Yes, I'm a pragmatist. We have to have the government involved in some things, but I'm also a big fan of reducing that and pulling that out. That's why I do what I do, is so that it's not a government organization. We're doing this privately. Are there what are the veterans organizations are there programs for veterans that the state of Idaho runs that you're familiar with? And I don't know if you've...
You know what? I'll let you tell me about those.
Okay.
You fill me in.
All right. So, I think on the lowest level, the basis level, we have the counties, so the veteran service officers. And one of the things, I don't know why, I think part of it is ego, but in a lot of counties, smaller counties like Bingham County, the veteran service officer also is in charge of indigent services. So it's same person, same office. and usually there's one, especially for the smaller counties. And for whatever reason, guys think that it's ridiculous to have your VSOs and your Indigenous Services person be in the same thing. But there's a lot of us that are indigent or lack financial resources. Mm-hmm. So from my perspective, I've always thought, well, that actually kind of makes sense. So, you need help. If you're not getting the help through the VA system, at least they can direct you toward programs to help out there. The other programs that the different states have that are popping up are vocational therapy, recreational therapy, reintegration therapy.
And these are in other states, not in Idaho.
And I'm really not seeing a lot of that in Idaho. Mm-hmm. So with HB 642, mm-hmm. we are leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. And then on some of these other programs, we're way behind. So what would be your thoughts on something where we have an organization, whether or not it's an NGO or a government, where we're focusing on reducing some of the bureaucracy and the hurdles that we face? I mean, the programs that most of us are looking for, quite honestly, number one is finance. Mm-hmm. If you're not financially stable and financially comfortable, everything else in your life falls apart. You're not going to get the medical care you need, the mental health care you need, all those sorts of things. And then housing comes right next to that, especially right now with mortgages being just insane.
Crazy.
Rent's insane. One of the states, I can't remember which one it was, what they've done is they developed a program and really kind of cast off most of their other veterans programs, and it's a transitional deal. So you retire from law enforcement, you retire from the military or whatever. They help you transition and work through all the programs, whether or not it's disability, housing assistance, VA home loans, and then they kind of pushed everything else to places like the American Legion and Veterans of Foreign Wars, and really reduced the government programs, pushed those into NGOs, but then developed a new program that is really designed for, to be a year. Mm-hmm. So the state is really helping you guide and direct you for that first year, and then after that you're working with the NGOs. Mm. Do you think Idaho could benefit from something like that, where we're really helping more with the transition? Or what are your thoughts on some of these more long-term programs where it's veterans homes and things like that?
Yeah. So I'm thinking through the different things that I saw during my legislative service. And one thing that seems similar is I remember that there was a treatment facility for addiction up north. It was a private facility. It was run by a church, and I can't remember the details of how the whole fight ended, but there was an argument about whether to allow them to provide services that would otherwise have been provided by the state, and to allow the funding to follow in those cases. And I remember being struck by how high their success rate was. And because in this instance, their ability to bring in a component of faith to the addiction recovery program in a way that the state programs were not, seemed to kind of be a secret sauce with these boys, and they were just and I think beyond the concept of faith, it also was in the context of their own community and personal relationships, and I think that also makes a huge difference. So I'm a really big fan of any time we have situations where you have government providing these services and we're able to move those more to the community level, to our churches, to our charitable organizations. I just think that we have the heart for it. Mm-hmm. As people that somebody in a big bureaucracy kind of loses track of. Yeah. Unfortunately, and it's not that it's not well intentioned. It is, but it's just, there's something that happens when a person voluntarily picks up a cause because they love it. That's a little different from when somebody just advertises a position.
Right.
And you fill out the application and they hand you a paycheck.
Yeah. Well, and I'd love to hear you say that, because what when it comes to the government programs, there's so many regulations that restrict what you can do. Just like the medication thing, to get opioids, all the regulations, and the doctors are always saying, well, it's weird because this rule changed, that rule changed. I mean, for quite a while, to get normally to refill my VA prescriptions, there's an app on my phone. I go through, I just reorder whatever I need. For the pain management meds, I have to call the clinic, talk to somebody on the phone. Just this ridiculous layer of bureaucracy. And from a nonprofit standpoint, if somebody needs help, I don't have to sit there and be stymied by the bureaucracy. I can say, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. We need to maybe change our policy or go through and do something different. But I think with the government programs, what we're seeing is just over-regulation. And people are spending entirely too much time trying to bloat the organization as opposed to finding ways to shrink it. And my philosophy on government is kind of the same way with problem solving. I've told everybody who's ever worked for me that you can complain as many times as you want, but for every complaint you owe me 2 reasonable solutions. And my thought with government is, okay, every new program we add, we have to take away 2 and really reduce these regulations. Are there any things that you're seeing from an Idaho standpoint where we've just gone overboard on regulation? It doesn't necessarily have to be for veterans and first responders on this one. Are we overcomplicating something?
Oh, goodness. I'm sure there are a lot of examples of that. I'll tell you one that I've actually had a number of conversations about just in the last couple of weeks is our special needs education. So I spoke with a former special needs teacher and just was asking her about her experience in the classroom, specifically about bureaucracy and paperwork. And she shared with me her intense frustration during the time that she was in the classroom. She only has so many hours, and she's got all these kids, and some of the kids, the federal programming, the curriculum that they were supposed to be teaching just was not what the kid needed. And she could see there were these other things. If she could pull them and work with them one-on-one, she could really help them. But she had to get the paperwork done. And she went to her administrator and said, hey, my time is limited. I really want to be able to work one-on-one with these kids and pull them out. And she was told she had to prioritize the paperwork. Whatever you do, get the paperwork done, even if the kid is the casualty.
Right.
And that's unfortunate. I think that's an example, a great example of what you're talking about. And the problem is if we don't engage in the kind of creative problem solving that you're talking about, and we just throw more government money at the same system without making any changes, the paperwork just builds. Yeah. And the solutions don't come. Yeah. Because government is not built to innovate.
Right.
It's not. It's risk averse, it's top heavy, it's enormous, and it's meant to just protect against anything crazy.
Right.
That's its full-time job. Keep everything the same, and how do you meet people's needs in a real world where everything isn't just always the same, where every person is different, every situation is different? If you can't bring a human face to it and a human heart to it and a little bit of creativity, you're never going to get anywhere.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, and that's, as a group, that's kind of the way we are. So I know so many people who deal with things differently. So, well, in the medication issue I brought up where you have to call in, there was a problem with the phone systems in Salt Lake over the summer. I went 60 days without my pain meds. And fortunately, that, like I said, that drug is
That's
not
probably a little dangerous, isn't it?
incredibly.
Like, not just the pain, but not having the medication all of a sudden and the withdrawal and whatever else comes with it.
Yeah, and
So-
fortunately, I didn't go through physical withdrawals, but
Okay.
here's a problem. My wife and I have been married for 27 years. Up until the last year and a half, I'd never yelled at her. You know, maybe, hey, Sarah, you know, across the hall, honey. Never once yelled at her in anger. Never once did she ever feel like, you know, I was loud or out of control. The trauma, yeah, I pulled several kids' bodies out of the water over the last couple of years. I lost my brother. I lost my administrator, her husband was a friend of mine as well, lost him to suicide. We lost a firefighter last week to suicide. So yeah, lots of stress, lots of trauma, lots of emotional stuff. But that's not something I haven't been able to handle in the past. And now, with all of that stuff stacked up, for the VA system to break to where, oh, you can't treat your pain. Because the amount of opium I take is massive. It would kill you if you started taking what I'm on daily. It would kill you to start off with that amount. And so we spend all of this time, all of this money, all of this effort. But I called my primary care doctor in Pocatello, and they're sending emails to pain management. Nothing can happen. Nothing can be done. And by the time I finally got through, after they fixed their phone system, the pharmacist who can actually fill the prescriptions for that particular drug, because you have to go through special training because we've overregulated it, she was on vacation. She comes back, my pain management doctor goes on vacation. By the time all of this is said and done, I had to call the VA police. And I talked to an officer in there, and I said, nobody's calling me back. I can't get a hold of anybody. I really shouldn't be driving right now. Can you take a message to them? And the guy said, well, that's not our job. That's not what we're supposed to do. And I said, I'm out of options, man. Can you go in there and physically hand somebody a note to say, call me? And he did. And that's what finally got somebody to call me.
Wow.
So we have overcomplicated the hell out of everything. And
Talk about needing a human face.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because who do you call? How do you deal with a bureaucracy as big as the VA? And Idaho, for a while, we were on a race to make it our bureaucracies as big as possible as well. We still have some people who really want to overdevelop and overgrow stuff, but from a government side standpoint, do you come from the thought process of, especially when it comes to dangerous people who need medications, do you think this reducing the bureaucracy, reducing the size of those systems would be better, or growing it would be better to make something like the VA healthcare system work?
Right. Well, the thing that makes sense to me is that the more sensitive the situation is, the more important it is to be close to it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of medically, if you've got a sensitive injury, you get right in there, you take a close look, you're very careful, you're very hands-on. If you're just washing your hands and you're scrubbing down on your way in to the room or whatever, grab the brush.
Right.
Go big, but if you're dealing with something tiny, you'd better be up close and personal. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. We keep falling back with this group of people. I mean, like same with my wife. I yelled at her several times this summer, and I still feel bad about it. I was right in my position of I was legitimately upset. It wasn't for no reason, but my reaction was completely unacceptable. And we're starting to, and I think that's where these suicides are coming from. I think that's part of why we're seeing those elevated rates in veterans and first responders. Is you wind up with chronic pain issues. You wind up with people not understanding you. If I talk to you the way I talk to my brother, you would think I hated you and I was angry with you. And it's not. He was a Marine, he was Army, lots of profanity, lots of insults, but we can't communicate with the general public like that. So from a government standpoint, I've thought for many years that our programs need to really focus more on integrating people who have been in those jobs as the people that are helping. My CBT therapist, not military. My psychiatrist, not military. The counselor I had before, not military.
Right.
And that, I think that's one of the hardest problems we could have out there.
It works well with addiction,
right.
doesn't it? I mean, the very best addiction coaches or supports are people who have been there, done that, and they can speak to it from personal experience.
Yeah, isn't most
That
of
makes sense.
Isn't most of that done on the private side? There's not a lot of government.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But there's some fantastic addiction coaches out there that are recovered.
Yeah.
And
you speak the language. You know
Yeah.
what it's like.
yeah,
Because I can't. No matter how many war movies you watch, you're not going to understand what the experience is like. And just something big blowing up next to you, even if it doesn't hurt you, it changes your brain quite a bit. So, are there any veterans issues that you've worked on, or that you want to discuss, or question? I mean, you can ask me questions.
Oh boy. Well, so I'm just thinking, I'm brainstorming right now because you threw out an idea. So I'm thinking, do we have support groups, networks within the VA or VFW or any of those where there's a network of supports available to people, and we're actually formalizing some of those relationships and cares, or I'm just curious.
That's a really hard one. So group therapy sessions, that's part of the VA counseling program. You can do that. Those typically degenerate into a complaint session. Two people are vocally loud with all their complaints. Everybody else just sits there and is like, oh, okay, I'm not coming back to this. The American Legion VFW, those wind up being drinking clubs. You see a lot of that. And this is not a group that should be spending a lot of time on alcohol.
Right.
Especially,
So not healthy supports there.
Right. And then, so there's a lot of programs out there, a lot of people. I mean, the Elks Lodge here in Blackfoot, they raise tons of money for veterans. But realistically, there certainly aren't any government programs that I'm aware of where
people can sign up to be a peer support or a mentor or anything like that for other returning veterans.
I love that idea. Well, so you join the Army, basic training, everybody's your cattle. Just run, shoved together, pushed around. Once you get to your first duty station, you get assigned a mentor. They take you through and they get you your issued equipment. Make sure that you have a bank account set up properly. Show you where everything is on post. Show you where to go to eat. All of those sorts of things. What do you think of something like that for us as we come back?
It sounds really cool. It does sound cool.
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, when you were talking about the peer program,
We mentor people on the way in. Why don't we mentor them on the way out?
yeah. You know what? And later on too, let's talk. Let's come back to this, and you know, regardless of how the election comes out for this particular cycle, if you want to think about that, I'm going to think about that a little bit too.
Okay.
Maybe that's something we can come up with a solution to.
Yeah.
I love that idea. Because I mean, even you think about how big bureaucracies are. Try and come back and get VA disability without a mentor, without somebody to lead you through the program.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like it would be healing not only for the person that is receiving the care, but for the person who's giving the care.
That is one of the most insightful things I've heard about this group. We do what we... some people...
Your whole life has been service.
Right.
Right?
Some people join because they need a job. Some people join because they want to blow stuff up. Most of us join or take these jobs because we help, we care, we give.
Right.
And it gives us purpose. And quite frankly, I think the biggest challenge that all of us face is the transitioning out.
Right. Where's your purpose now? How do you serve?
Yep. you gain weight from the change in nutrition. You people get in fights. My first year back, I got 6 speeding tickets. My license should have been suspended. It wasn't for whatever reason, but 6 speeding tickets in 12 months. I haven't had a ticket since, and I hadn't had one since I was a teenager beforehand. But my brain was that last deployment. I came back very, very much not right. But if I had an opportunity and somebody called me and said, "Hey, I've got this guy. He's just getting out. You want to mentor him to this and this?" I'd absolutely jump into it. And I'm definitely not unique in that. I think there's a lot of people that would. So as your political career continues, that's something you would want to spearhead?
It is the kind of thing that I would be interested in exploring. I like the sound of it.
I do too. I think it's a great idea. Okay, we are about out of time for this one. So anything else you want to bring up, or anything you want to say to the group?
Sure. Just thank you. Thank you so much for the service that you've given and that you give today. I grew up with a grandpa who served in World War II in a B-13. He did 33 missions, 32. It was one short of whatever was the time that you could go home. I think it was 33 missions over Germany. His final mission was to go in and help get POWs out. And I understand, as I've read his life history, when I was a little girl, I just thought, he was just this glowing hero up here, right? Superpower. And then I learned that when he got home and married my grandma, she almost left him because of the night terrors and the PTSD and everything that he'd been through. And he was just the most kind, gentle person you would ever meet. I just remember everywhere he went, as he worked on things, he was whistling. And so pleasant, but his negative effects from his service were so intense and affected his personality and his function so much that she almost left him. And her mother said, "No, you go back and give that boy a chance." And I know that she was so grateful. Yeah. So they both lived to be over 90. But it really brought a human dimension to what people experience.
Yeah.
As I grew older and learned more about his experience and story. So thank you so much for what you do. We would not have the freedoms that we have without people who are willing to sacrifice so much. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Julianne. I'm so glad that you were able to come out today. So if you guys want to get involved, and if you have questions for any of our guests, we can forward those on. If you want to help us, go to heroesdivingforthesea.org. And you can look at our program, see what we've got going on. We've got raffles for some cool stuff. If you'd like to donate, we're happy with that too. Also, if you want to do one of these interviews, if you're running for office, or if you just want to tell your story, reach out to admin@heroesdivingforthesea.org. Aubrey will get you directed in the right place. And all of our videos are available on YouTube at PTSD Stories.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ken.
Yeah, thank you.